I think right now the most important thing a cinematographer can work on is being. I'm assuming most people watching this video, they're wanting to learn. They're probably at the same stage I am. We're just wanting to learn, and I happen to have an opportunity to make a really cool movie, and it's exciting. This film, the company called Glitch that nobody ever wanted, had several different actors from different backgrounds. We have David Payton, who's in WandaVision. We had Jack Merlo, who was in Call of Duty. Hi, my name is Graham Holliday. I am the director and director of photography, or cinematographer, of the company called Glitch that nobody and everybody wanted. The company called Glitch that nobody and everybody wanted is a business thriller, and it's a little bit different for several reasons. One, of course, it is a lower budget film filmed during the pandemic, so there's going to be some logistical things that make it different. And then, number two, it's a film that's based around a bunch of people talking. Instead of filming a Zoom call and just letting characters talk on a Zoom call, which is very boring, we want to add in the cinematic element of people talking as if they're talking to each other in real time with the cutting, the editing. A lot of this comes down to editing, but I want to walk through kind of what the directing choices are like, as well as the director of photography choices and how I split in between those. The film follows Ev Kaufman, a tech entrepreneur who's trying to secure funding for his struggling startup in order to keep from getting bought out by a threatening competitor. Well, as the director and the director of photography, so one thing I did was I tried to delineate between being a director and a director of photography. So I did a lot of the preparation for being director of photography before getting on set. Same with director as well, but I tried to keep the roles split because as a director, I know what I want a feeling to have, and I try and keep that very much focused on the actors. I have my notes on do it as if this, or do it with this action verb. I have all my directing notes. That's separate from my director of photography notes, which is how I'm planning to shoot a scene. So I try and keep things such as storyboards, composition, eye lines, which way characters are facing. That's more director of photography side, whereas I allow my creative self to do the director side as well. With the company called Glitch that nobody and everybody wanted, this film was shot so that the characters would have more momentum and action than they actually do have. Because it very much is a lot of characters sitting at desk, kind of like I'm doing, talking to a computer on FaceTime to somebody else in a different room. So there's a little bit of setting change. We don't get stuck in one room for a long time. But then there's also the story happening as you're listening to what these characters are saying as they get off this call, go to another call. So keeping this all visually interesting is going to be hard to begin with. One thing that we didn't have was a big budget to do anything we wanted. It had to be very creative. So one thing I wanted to focus on was doing what I could do really, really well. And in order to do that, that means you can't do some things. You can't have a dolly shot every other shot. You can't have really cool, crazy 360 shots that really add to the story. As much as I wanted to do that, I had to tell the story. And telling the story as simply as possible was what I had to do as this job. So what I decided to do was create the characters talking and create it so that it's as fascinating as possible. So sometimes it's very much just two characters talking back and forth, and we have a medium shot and we cut back and forth between that. This is where lighting comes into play. Do you light the back of their face so that there's a little more mystery to it, or do you write it full on? There's a couple scenes I wanted to walk through kind of how I told the story as visually as possible. One is there's a character, Cheryl, who is being asked questions by Ev, and he's asking if the company that Cheryl sold to is a good company. So she's being very elusive. We only see her from the side. Every shot is a side profile shot. And we come a little bit, say, at a little bit of 45-degree angle and see, but we never see Cheryl completely front and center until she tells the truth. So that's something that there's little bits like that help add to the story. Every character has a shot that they're designed and it's built around them so that they convey what the character's showing. So I'll just walk you through what it looked like on a day of shooting as we came up with shots. I had it in some ways storyboarded. I knew what it was going to look like in my mind, but a lot of the locations we didn't know what they're going to look like until we got there. So you maybe have an hour before the actor shows up and you got to be shooting. This is based on 8-hour days with SAG actors. Because of the budget, there's no way we could film over 8 hours. Otherwise, you have to pay double over or half overtime than full overtime. So even though most films are shot over a 12 to 16-hour day, we had to shoot 8 hours because that's all we could afford at some of these locations. Also, that made the locations a little bit cheaper because you're running at an hourly scale. Most of these were sound stages in LA, or even some of them are photo stages in LA. And what we would do, get there at 8 in the morning and figure out what's the set going to be. If you want a character scene powerful, I mean, the kindergarten way to do it, you just put the camera down low. So, I mean, we wouldn't go over the top, but we would just put a little bit lower. Okay, that's what we want. Do we want to feel alone, or do we want to be up close and feel it personally? Well, that's going to decide if it's a close-up or further back. And a lot of this is decided in editing. So I wanted to give some options for the editor to work with, because as a director, I knew what I wanted, but also this is a film that hasn't really been done this way before, and you have characters talking to each other, but they're not actually there. You're having a stand-in actor read the lines, and you don't know exactly how that actor's going to read the lines when they're actually acting. So you're trying to balance all this together and make it work seamlessly. So you need to have options. We shot close to 30 pages in one day, and that's just nonstop dialogue. That wasn't the average. Average is probably 10 to 15 pages a day, but that was just the economics of what we had. These actors are here for one day, and they have to do all these shots. Working with actors is a learning process. You can pretty much never stop learning. As a director, you take an acting class, and all of a sudden you've learned a whole new thing. You start judging everything you've done on another film, and you're like, man, I got to do better. But then as a director of photography, I think your interaction with actors is different on every film. And for this film, since I was director and director of photography, the actors got a lot of interaction. And it was very hard to decide, okay, is the camera shot more important, or is the actor more important? And that's why I did go for a lot of the very simple shots. This film, the company called Glitch, that nobody ever wanted, had several different actors from different backgrounds. We have David Payton, who's in WandaVision. We had Jack Merlo, who was Call of Duty voice actor in several scenes. And a lot of the scenes, the lighting it's interesting how it's going to work, because if overall the lighting in a place is crap, there's not much I can do in 1 hour to get it right. But I can make it look okay. And sometimes you mess up the environment so that the person looks right. Because if the person looks right, you're good. And sometimes you can skew the person a little bit. There's a lot of scenes at night with Ev in the police station, and it's completely dark. Of course, it's a story choice too, so you don't notice it till the end, but you just see his face lit. And as long as his face is lit, everything else is just the blacks are crushed in that scene. You don't see anything. And he's just there, and it's so much fun to watch because, I don't know, it just looks cool when you're staring at his face, and that's all you notice is his face and what's happening. You don't notice the background. So in the same way that worked, I think that advice goes to how you would make it work for someone with a different skin tone. So let's take David Payton from WandaVision. You'll notice the scene he's in, it's in a really bright spot, and skin tones look really natural because there's a bunch of sunlight pouring in. It's all diffused. We brought in a few of our own lights to accent certain things, get a little backlight, throw some color on the wall, and it just works. So that's something I've noticed is the environment is the thing you kind of adjust. So if you have a darker skin tone actor, then you want the environment to be a bit brighter. That's just kind of a rule of thumb. I don't think it has to be that way. There's a lot of scenes where it couldn't be that way. That's totally fine. But one thing that is just easier if you can change the environment a little bit. But one thing that was really fun about this film, and a lot of stuff falls under this kind of catch-all, is every actor is filmed separately. Up until the very end, there's no actors interacting. They're all separate. So you can adjust the lighting just to that actor, and color grade will meld the two scenes because they're in two different locations. As long as it doesn't feel like it's from the same movie, you're good. But in terms of making sure that actor's lit really well while another actor's not, we didn't have any of those challenges. And that's why we were able to film really fast, because you just filming one actor, make them look really good, make sure it matches the same movie, and boom, you're kind of good. So a lot of problems that I could have faced and had to dealt with, just kind of cut those out in pre-production and told a very simple story and didn't try and complicate it. It'd be a whole lot different if we were trying to make a different movie than the one we made. But one thing that really helps is when you make the movie you're trying to make and make it as simply as possible and tell that story. Because if this film succeeds, it's going to be because of the story and the actor's utter commitment to it. It's not going to be because the lighting is the best lighting in the world. So tell the story, do good on your lighting, make sure it's solid, that it's remarkable as best as you can, but making that the focus is losing sight of the main thing. And that's what is cool when you have a bunch of people working together and every single person is working to make sure their department's really good. That's fun. That's really fun. Make sure the story stays the story. The story's the main thing. If anything tops the story, then I've lost sight of what's important as the director. So that's very important to keep in mind. As a very young cinematographer and someone who is not as fascinated by the technical side of things, I think one thing you can really focus on, I'll give you two things. And one is something I've learned as a cinematographer. One is something I've learned from working with another cinematographer. The one I've learned about myself is just simply focus on the main thing. Because as a cinematographer, you're thinking about the technical side of things. You're not thinking about the actors as much. Yeah, you know it's important, but you're not thinking about it as much. You want to make sure the camera shot's really smooth. You're noticing that little jitter. In post, you're like, okay, we need to make sure that jitter's not there. And the director's like, well, I like the shot. I don't want to cut that shot because I don't care about the jitter. They just don't notice the technical things as much as you're going to notice them. So as a cinematographer, when you're on set, and this will flow into the next thing I have as well, make sure that you're focusing on the main thing. When you're setting a shot, explain what has to be right to the director, right? Hey, we need to take another 5 minutes because this light needs to be here so the skin tone's right. It'll match in post. It'll be very nice for you. Or, hey, this shadow is here. It's a little distracting. I'm just letting you know what happens. I'm not saying we have to cut it, but it's there. And by pointing out things, being observant, you know what the director is focused on. And you're like, hey, this thing could help your vision or it could hurt your vision. Just know what's important in the shot, in the scene. Is the director doing this scene because he wants the actors to feel a little bit of tension with each other? Then use your skill as a cinematographer to make that happen. But then also know that adding this tiny little backlight here that makes it look perfect to you to look good in your cinematographer reel is good, but if it doesn't help tell the story, it's kind of useless. And then the thing that I've learned from working with another cinematographer, this is 3 years later, got to work with a really good cinematographer, and we were filming this survival thriller set in a bunker. And one thing, it had a lot of technical stuff in it. He's insanely good. He's way above where I'll ever be. And his technical knowledge is awesome. But one thing that made me want to work with this guy, and 100% will work with him again, is that he's a good people person. As a cinematographer, you probably got into it because you want to be more the behind the scenes person. You're just comfortable with a camera, you're really good at it. And I'm assuming most people watching this video, they're wanting to learn. They're probably at the same stage I am. We're just wanting to learn, and I happen to have the opportunity to make a really cool movie, and it's exciting. But most people, we're not at the level where we're directing, major level talent and have hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think right now the most important thing a cinematographer can work on is being a good people person. There's just no room to be a jerk. And if you're a jerk, no one's going to want to work with you again. Doesn't matter how good you are. I would much rather have a cinematographer that gets the scene 85% of the way there and it's really fun to work with than someone who gets it 98% of the way there, but it's not fun to work with. Because you spend a lot of time with that cinematographer talking, and you spend a lot of time with them brainstorming. And if they're not nice and they're not fun, I don't want to work with them. So that's more advice from the director end of things, where I would much rather work with a cinematographer who they're very good. They know what they're doing. They don't overpromise. They tell you what they're going to do, and they surprise you. They do a great job, but they're also just fun to work with. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can be is, learn your technical stuff. Stay up to date on what's happening. Get really good at your craft. But at the same time, make sure you're being a really fun person to work with. And you don't have to be someone you aren't, but just learn people skills. People skills are going to go a lot farther than a very rare technical skill. So focus on people skills. It's one of the best things you'll do as a cinematographer. That is what it was like being a cinematographer on a very low budget SAG film. Working with SAG actors, keeping it economical is very important. But also at the same time, making sure it's technically done at a level that we could master was also important. Didn't try and shoot for the moon, did what we could do and did it really well. And people will remark at something that's done simply but really well. And above all, be a nice person to work with. So if you like videos like this, please subscribe to Visual Poetry. They are an incredible channel that have been putting out great content, allowed me to be on this. So subscribe to Visual Poetry.